Hey there, I'm glad you stopped for this episode because you are about to meet somebody who is the true definition of getting out of your comfort zone. You're about to meet Judge LaTosha McGill Clayton of Fort Bend County, Texas. She is just somebody that I am in awe of because she started out in K-12 education, just like myself, but she didn't stay there. She went from educator to practicing law. Now she is a judge in one of the largest counties in Texas and currently running for election in a brand new district. But aside from all of those accomplishments, I think the most impressive thing about her is her courageousness in always being ready for whatever the next chapter is going to bring. The word that we use that she was repeating to herself throughout all of these transitions was obedience. And I want you to listen carefully to her story about some of the things that she had to tell herself, some of the things that she had to learn to let go of in order to make the faithful leap into whatever the next chapter would bring. So if you are on the threshold, if you are at that division in the road where you're trying to figure out, should I or shouldn't I do the next scary thing, then this is the episode for you. Stick around and meet my guest, Judge LaTosha McGill Clayton. Hello again. Welcome to the Melanated Midlife Podcast. We are going to get all behind the scenes goodness from a lady that is at the top of her career right now. We are joined today by Judge LaTosha McGill Clayton. And you see how I did that pause? Because, I got to do the fangirl stuff. She is doing some big things, and we're going to hear her behind the scenes journey of how she got into this position of being the Democratic candidate for a judgeship here in Fort Bend County in the Houston area. So if anybody is outside of the Houston area, just know that this is, if I'm not mistaken, am I saying it? This is the second largest county in Texas?
Yes, it's up there. It is definitely up there and continuing to grow.
Ooh, and so she is all up in the space right now, currently on the campaign trail, and graciously stopped to allow us to hear a little bit about the journey. So, Judge Clayton, welcome.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity. And so thank you.
Hey, I want you to spill all of it because I'm sitting back here wondering how in the world, just before we started recording, I said, you know what? I have my days when I don't even want to turn my camera on, let alone smile at anybody. But with you, you're now in the public eye. And so this is a whole thing. You have to show up all the time. So I got to ask you the question that I ask all of the guests. You're doing this very publicly, but what has midlife meant to you so far?
So midlife has meant to me that honestly, this is just the beginning. I know it sounds crazy, but this feels like it is just the beginning of a new season. When we get to this point in our lives, we have already survived different seasons, whether they are hard seasons or whether they're successful seasons. We've celebrated different milestones and different victories. Even across the way, we have also gained wisdom. And I think that at this point, too, we kind of know what we can deal with and who we are at this point in our lives. And so, it's allowed me to grow tremendously, to really figure out who I am and to know who I am and to go ahead and get it done and pursue joy and what it is that I need to do to be able to get to where I'm going.
Yeah, because you are going and have been some places. And I always love to just pause and give kudos to any of my people that are from the education space. And I know that that is part of your origin story with your career. So tell us a little bit about that.
So when I started out, actually, my first career was education. So I went to Sam Houston State University, graduated from Sam Houston, and had a bachelor's degree in biological sciences with a minor in chemistry. It's like, what?
Yeah, I'm like, wait a second. That don't sound nothing like a teaching degree.
Exactly. And so The plan was kind of pre-med. And, when we are, and I was in my early 20s at that time. And so, you just kind of fill out where it is that you want to go in life. And so I did go ahead and finish with that. I did not change my major or anything. And so at that time is when there was a shortage of teachers in the science area. And so, my mom had always told me that, hey, you go and teach, you will always have a job. And I also come from a family of teachers. My mom, my grandparents were teachers. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and do this. And so I did end up teaching 6th and 7th grade science. And I absolutely loved it. The children, I love speaking with the families to make sure that the children were excelling in what it is that they needed to do. And so I just really enjoyed it. And so that was definitely my starting point in my journey. But that also taught me a whole lot of patience, lots of patience and perseverance. And so I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about compassion, which I realized that I already had. And so, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it quite a bit. So they say once an educator, always an educator.
I can definitely affirm that. Definitely. Even now, like I say, in all of my transitions, people will say, "What do you do?" I still call myself an educator. So
Mhm.
my classroom is a little bit bigger. The platform is a little bit bigger, but it is still the same goal, same purpose. But
Correct.
you didn't stop there because we could easily just go on and leave it at that, but you have made some serious pivots in the people, the person, the woman that showed up to watch this right now. I am pretty sure that she has had a full career somewhere and
Mhm.
is wondering what else is there? Can I do something else? I've got some ideas. There's some big pivots, but boy, it feels scary. I don't know. You made that pivot. Tell us how you went from education into this public space where you are now, because that feels like a big jump. I'm assuming, did you just decide, hey, that looks kind of fun over there, I'm going to try it? Or was there something that kind of pulled you along or made a mindset shift?
So really when I was at Sam Houston around about my third or right before I was going to graduate or getting ready to graduate. And it was kind of one of those decisions I had to make as to whether or not I wanted to change my major or not. And so I had really kind of thought about it while I was in school at Sam Houston. And then I said, well, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and explore, the teaching field as well. And so probably at around about year 5, as I was teaching, I decided, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and do it because I realized that with law school, you didn't have to have a specific major in college. You didn't have to necessarily have anything specific, but
Okay.
and so with my degree, I was still able to go ahead and navigate that particular trail without having to go back and major in anything else. And so I did the research on that and went ahead and said, you know what, I'm going to jump out there and I'm going to do it. It was absolutely scary because, you kind of risk getting out there and then not making it. And I don't want to say drowning, but you just never really know. And so I took the step to do that. I basically had to go ahead and quit my job. I could not teach and then also do law school at the same time. And so that was
Okay.
a huge
Yeah.
transition and doing that. And so I had to have a lot of faith and I had to, just go ahead and decide that I was going to go ahead and stick with it. When I started, one of my favorite classes was family law. And I said, you know what? This is everything that I am, with the teaching and everything, having the compassion for children. And I said, this is something that I want to do. And so I continued to stick with it. And then finally, when I graduated, passed the bar and everything, opened up my own firm. And, sometimes you can go to the corporate world and sometimes you can go to the private world, the private sector, and even the government sector as well. And so what I did and what I wanted to do was to make sure that I was in front of people, that I was actually talking to and interacting and helping the people. And so my practice areas was family law, criminal law, personal injury, and wills and probate. And I really enjoyed that. Protecting the lives of families, because you do that in family law as well as in criminal and personal injury, and especially wills and probate as well. And so that was a very challenging yet rewarding time in my career as I was going through with just basically protecting families. And that was the first thing that I did. And like I said, I enjoyed it.
I got a couple questions right there before I forget. And again, my menopause brain
Sure.
will have me going all over the place. So I have to ask before it, escapes my mind. But I don't want the person that's listening to miss a very important thing that you just said, because going from education, you quit, we always say that good, safe job
Mm-hmm.
to
Yes,
go to
ma'am.
law school full time. So that's a huge leap right there. But
Yes,
then
ma'am.
when you came out of law school, you started your own firm, and that is not a small thing. So, I mean, good Lord. I'm
Yes.
like, that's a couple of things right there. I mean, because I am one of those folks where I'm thinking of what is this like for you behind the scenes to make that truly leap of faith. I'm going to quit my job. I'm going to give all of my attention to law school. Then I'm going to quit law school and I'm going to totally go into business for myself. That I think it deserves a little bit of a breath. So tell us, what was it like behind the scenes to just go all in like that?
So it was scary. It really takes a lot of faith in that, because number one, you have to have the business mind. And so I had to learn that aspect of it, because that's extremely important. And then I had to also advertise and make sure that I got myself out there, because that's how you build your reputation. And so I had to put all of those things together. I was new at it because, remember, my major was biological sciences and chemistry. And so it took a lot of educating and definitely educating myself about the business aspect of it, as well as the advertising aspect of it. And so it was a huge learning curve. And not only that, I think maybe I mentioned that I graduated from Thurgood Marshall School of Law, and they prepare us, right? But there are some things that you also have to make sure that you are able to learn on your own, especially when you are in private practice. And so there is of course, the law, the codes that you have to learn. You have to make sure that you put yourself with a mentor. And I would tell anybody that is listening to never be afraid of getting a mentor in something that you are doing that is brand new, because that's going to determine whether you sink or whether you succeed. And so so that's something that I had to do. I had great mentors. I was not afraid to ask anyone for help, because the most important thing to me was to make sure that I was representing people in my best way, and so that I would be able to still continue to protect families. So I was never afraid to ask any questions. And, even though that was 20 years ago, still to this day, I still have mentors. And so there is no shame in asking anyone questions about your profession, whether there is something that you might not know or something that you want to learn. It's never, ever in a career, in my opinion, to be afraid to ask questions, or never stop asking questions, and have mentors. So that was something that helped me tremendously, because when you're in your own firm, you're solo. You're a solo practitioner is what it's called. And so I won't say that it was easy, but it did prepare me for my next phase and for my next season. So I'll stop right there. And unless you want me to go on to the next chapter.
She just eased it on in there. I didn't stop there. That's not the most interesting part of my career. I totally agree, but I want you to go all the way in there, because the other part that I'm questioning is when you say, you're an introvert and you had to get visible. You had to put yourself out there. And I think more women our age need to hear that message because I can't speak for everybody, but I feel like I'm hearing so often with women that are, in this beautiful ripe age and they're making these pivots. They were taught to just work hard and keep your head down. They were taught that if I just, dedicate myself to my job, my career, or whatever, that somebody is going to see that and assume I'm dedicated and I will one day be rewarded for just focusing on the work and that's it. Visibility seems to be a new concept for a lot of mature women. So, how did you come to terms with that? Did you have to kind of shake yourself out of a little bit of that introversion, or because I consider myself an introvert as well, but I kind of see it as one thing is necessary in order for me to get the things that I'm looking for. What about for you?
Mhm. Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. It's very necessary. As an introvert, and what I mean by being an introvert, I work behind the scenes and I work very hard. And one of the things that I have had to learn since when I opened up my practice is that I had to step outside of my comfort zone and actually get out there. Because guess what? When I went to court, I had to be in front of a judge and there's always people in the courtroom. So I had to go ahead and get out there and get over that very quickly, especially with the areas of practice that I went into. And I will also say this is that when you get out there, you also have to be prepared. And I think that that's in any career that you're in because someone is always watching. And it's important, and it's always been important to me to make sure that when I am out there outside of my introverted self, that I put on my best. And behind the scenes, you are working hard to actually get there so that you are presenting and bringing the best that you have. And I mean something when I say that everyone is. And so I'll put a pin right there.
Yeah. I mean, you talk about going to court and you're in front of a judge and you've got clients, you've got people that you're representing. So they're looking for you to show up as your best self as well. So I totally get that. But I want to turn that focus right back on you again. Going into court as an attorney, but now you are stepping into the spotlight again, running for judge. And this is for the 501st District Court position. You are currently on the campaign trail. And it like I said, I gotta say, hey, she made time for me, honey. So we are actively still going for the role, the biggest role of your life. So that's not a small decision. You've already made a huge leap of faith from your education career, full time to law school, in business for yourself as an attorney. What happened? What made you just have this internal conversation, or what somebody or somehow you came to the decision that I'm ready for the next thing? Tell us how that happened.
Yes, that is correct. Okay. So after I was in private practice for about 7 or 8 years, I looked at what we call the Harris County Domestic Relations Office. And so I had applied there and I was able to work with the Harris County Domestic Relations Office as what we call an enforcement attorney. And so I loved it. It had to do with family law. I had to file motions for enforcement regarding child support, possession and access, basically helping families. And so I guess you could say I was kind of like a family law prosecutor and handling different cases. But that was also considered a heavy workload because it's Harris County. And so those workloads can get a little heavy. But like I was saying before, how I was talking about knowing yourself and having learned yourself, I learned that I could handle it. And so I was in court more often and, trying motions for enforcements and other type of cases. And so it really helped me to realize that number one, I love the job. I still love the job. And number two, what I could do with my perseverance and hard work. And so uh, I stayed there at the domestic relations office for about 9 years. And after that is when I was appointed to the 505th District Court by the elected judge. And so I'm going to tell you just a little bit how that happens. So, because some people get associate judge mixed up with an assistant judge. I had someone ask me, so are you just there when the other judge isn't there? No, we do the same thing, except for I'm governed under the Texas Family Code. So in 2020, the elected judge, what happens is because Fort Bend County and several other counties are large counties, and the family law caseload could get heavy. So we have to make sure that we are efficient and moving cases for families because we have emergencies and everything. And so we're usually not one judge is able to do all of that. And so what they do is they appoint an associate judge. So this elected judge, out of all of the attorneys, remember I was saying, somebody's always watching. They have to choose someone that they trust, someone that has the experience, someone that has the temperament. And that someone was me by the grace of God. And so I was appointed in 2020, sworn in 2021, and that is what I have been doing ever since. Now, yes, it was very surreal to me. And sometimes I feel like it's still a little surreal, but being on this side is very rewarding as well. And so that is where I am now since 2021 up until now. This past year, the governor signed into law a new family court, which is the 501st District Court. And so remember I talked about my love for families, my compassion for families. And I said, this court needs to start with a wonderful foundation and to continue to protect the families of Fort Bend County. And so with knowing how my heart is, my compassion, my hard work, and my desire to continue to help families, I went ahead and said, I'm going to do it. I'm going to put my name in the hat and I am going to go ahead and step out there. And that did take a lot of thought, lots of thoughts, lots of prayer, because like I said, I'm an introvert and I'm very used to working behind the scenes, just making sure that the job is done and working hard and making sure that it's done. And so coming into that, I said, it's for the families. It's for the families. And so I put my introvert self aside and said, I have to do this. And that's pretty much where we are. So was able to get through the primary. And so now I am the Democratic Party nominee for the 501st District Court and moving on to November. And like I said, it's for the love of families, my desires for helping families from all the way back when I started teaching. And so that is where we are right now and still continuing to help families with what I do now as an associate judge.
Yeah, I can definitely see the connection between how you started in education and it is very much focused on family and community to where you are now. I see that through line. I'm curious if where you are now at this age and I as a peer, in the same age group, I marvel at you being in this high profile position when, there's stuff that I know I'm going through. My girlfriends of the same age, we all kind of sit down and exhale together. It's like, girl, guess what else happened? Guess what I'm dealing with now? And I'm thinking about you in this, basically you're at the peak of your career. So, do you think you're better equipped to handle this now? Or could you have done it at some earlier point in your career? Is there anything you would have changed about the journey so far?
I have thought about that. And honestly, there is nothing that I would have changed. I believe that each person has an assignment during a certain season. Sure, I could have run some time ago. I've been in Fort Bend County basically all of my life. But I believe that there is a time that is the specific assignment. And I believe that in years past when I, didn't, or when I was at the domestic relations office, that was the time that I was supposed to be there. This time as an associate judge, I believe that this is the time that I should be here where I am now. And so I believe that there's a certain time and season and that our steps are ordered. So I believe that everything that I've just talked about from when I began teaching all the way up until now, I mentioned with the Harris County Domestic Relations Office that I, had a large caseload that I was able to handle. Well, as an associate judge, we have caseloads that we have to handle, and that has taught me how to move those cases efficiently and to be able to handle those cases and continue to protect families. And so that's where I am, and I have zero regrets. I feel like I am where I need to be at this point in my life. And again, I have no regrets. And I thought about that before. I was like, but looking at where I am, where I was, those were my assignments. And I think that if I had done it earlier, I don't know, I may have been a little too early. Sometimes we can be a little too early, but again, I believe that I'm where I am, and the way that I got there is how everything was supposed to work out.
I want to, because when we were originally preparing for this, I got some notes from you to, just talk about where you were and some of the lessons learned that you've had. And you used a word that I want to dig into, which is obedience. And you said that success is about obedience, endurance, basically trusting that God is working in your favor, whether you see it or not, just having that faith that this is all working out the way it's supposed to. So for someone and for the woman that is listening to this that has probably spent decades, just not questioning anything. I mean, with you, what does obedience look like when you're in your decision making? Because you've had several forks in the road where you had to make a very definitive decision. You don't gradually put your toe into the world of law and say, hey, you know what, I'm going to check it out for a little while. No, you made a commitment. So tell me, what does that decision making look like when you are trying to be obedient?
Being obedient, you have to stay extremely focused, because I think a lot of times we look at what other people might be doing, and we may sometimes define our success by what their success is. And we might sometimes move a little bit more quicker. We may move a little bit faster than where we should be. And so as far as my faith is concerned, I really have to pray about it. And once I get that answer, then I can move. But if I have any type of doubt, then that means it's probably meant for me to just wait. Because again, everyone's assignment is not the same assignment that you should have. Not everyone is supposed to be exactly in the same place where you are. And that's, like I said, that's very hard to discern, but with taking a step back and just kind of being in your alone time and figuring out what your purpose is, then I think that that is obedience, regardless of what it is that you want to be. I know, some people want to be a Supreme Court judge. Some people want to be, at the height of their career, they might want to be the superintendent. But sometimes those things take time, and sometimes there's a journey that you have to go through in order to get there, so that when you are there, that you'll be able to handle it. Being a judge is not an extremely, I don't want to fool anybody. Being a judge is an extremely powerful and important position, because you're talking about families. It's almost like, when a doctor is going into surgery, you can't play with that. And so one strike of the pen, could mean, a family is turned around. And so you have to really make sure that what it is that you are going into, as far as careers are concerned, that is where you're supposed to be, and that you have the tools and the preparation to actually get there. I'll be honest with you. Had I not been through my trials and tribulations and perseverance, I don't know that I would have been able to have the tools to be able to do what it is that I'm doing right now. And again, I know that this is where I am supposed to be in this moment. I've been here since 2021 is when 2021. which is when I was appointed. And so I have no regrets. I enjoy what I do, and I still have the compassion for it and ready to continue to do what I do.
I love that. And you've just brought something to mind because with each leap that you made, with every big decision that you decided, okay, I'm going after this thing. And I talk about this in my book as well, that there's so much about life and our seasons, our chapters that we go through where we are ready for the next thing. We're at that crossroads and we're considering, okay, I think this is what I want to do. I think this is the path I'm supposed to take now. But in order to jump to that next thing, it often requires us to let go of something else, to leave some whatever behind or whomever behind. And I'm curious if that has also been your experience. And if it has, I mean, what did that teach you?
And leaving something behind. So I talked about comfort zones. And really, I was in my comfort zone when I was teaching. I was in my comfort zone when I was just doing my own practice with my own hours, my flexibility. I was in my comfort zone at the domestic relations office where, I was able to do my work in my office. I didn't really have to be out in front of the public all the time. And it was just great. And so being able to take that leap, I had to leave all of that behind. And let me also mention this as well. Another reason why I was comfortable in those other zones is because if I wanted to, I could have remained there and just stayed right there. When you take a leap and you come into a position like this, we don't know what's going to happen. And so whenever I am the presiding judge that appointed me, there's an election every 4 years. And so there could be some shifting. And that was one of the biggest things was like, okay, they probably won't fire me here at the domestic relations office. Well, because, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. So I could stay here. But if I go over here and something happens and the voters decide something different, then so it was a leap. It was literally a leap of faith that I took in doing that. And again, been here since 2021. And so I had to really, really listen and get in my quiet spot. And I don't know if you have ever had the experience of really hearing the reassurance. I'll say the reassurance that it's okay. I got you. Then taking that leap of faith. And so, some people was just like, well, you just never know what's going to happen. But I knew that it was something that I was called to do. And like I said, I was a little hesitant and nervous at first because sometimes I think too that our overthinking can get the best of us as well.
Feel attacked. I feel attacked. Overthinking.
Our overthinking. Yes. And so when you are just sure and know that your steps have been ordered, then, you can take that leap of faith. And sometimes, we take the leap of faith and it may not be the thing that is for us. And it's okay because guess what? God will give us grace while we are still in there where maybe we, jumped out a little too quick. We'll still have that grace. And so I really believe that. And like I said, I just have no regrets, but yeah, I think that's pretty much how I got there and taken that leap of faith. So that's what I had to answer your question. That's what I had to leave behind. I had to leave behind the comfort zone.
I know that everyone that is watching this right now, they felt that because we always say, life, this is a quote, and I've got it over here I have a cork board on the wall, that life begins at the end of your comfort zone. And even at my big girl age, I still have to read that quote on a daily basis because everything I know, everything I've already done is in that comfort zone. The rest of life, the rest of the experiences, any new lessons to help me grow as a human being are going to be outside of that comfort zone. And I have to constantly be intentional about doing the scary thing. The tiny little scary thing leads to another tiny little step and another tiny, and before I know it, I'm miles away from that comfort zone and I won't even miss it. So, I mean, listening to you say that is very encouraging. And I hope that the message that lands with the listeners is that number one, you can have various seasons and have very full experiences in those seasons, but you never stop growing. You never stop reaching and keep moving because your career thus far has been a true testament to that. But before we round this out, because I mean, there's so much that I'm thinking about just with where you're going next. And I mean, I'm just claiming it, by the time November hits, we're gonna be saying, girl, she won. She she is in the seat. We're gonna make sure of that. But I mean, what would you whisper back to your younger self when you were first starting out, as I say, when you got that first big paycheck and you were paying your own way for the first time in your life? What would you whisper to that younger version of yourself, knowing what you know right now? What would you tell her?
Right. Well, thank you. I would say, keep going, girl. Keep going. No matter what, keep going. Keep going. She was scared. She was. She was afraid. And, I know that a lot of people are afraid of not succeeding or not being successful, but you keep going anyway, because if I had listened to some of the negative feedback, some of the things that were not so encouraging, then I probably would not have made it this far. But you have to believe in yourself. And I think there's a song that says you have to encourage yourself and you have to speak the words over yourself and you have to talk to yourself and say, listen, you are all of that and you can do it. You can persevere. And if there is something, because, this is my dream job. And if there is something that anyone out there is dreaming about, go and get it. And do not allow anyone or anything to stop you. Go and get it.
Yeah. Was she scared? I love that. I love that. Now, as you are standing at this threshold of your next season, and I'm going to say, let's just fast forward 4 years. You said this is a 4-year term. Is that what I heard you say? Okay. So let's fast forward 4 years and you're looking back on your accomplishments as judge of the 501st District Court. What do you want to be able to look back and say, okay, I did that. This is what changed because I was in that seat?
I would look back and say that as far as anything that has changed in the seat, that I was the one that made sure that families came into the court and that they were respected at all times, whether they were represented by an attorney or not, and that they were able to get their day in court. And not only that, but when they came in, they saw compassion on the bench. They didn't see anyone that was disrespectful, no matter what, but that they saw compassion on the bench and that they also saw fairness on the bench as well. And that they saw someone who was really willing to make sure that their families were protected and that their best interest was at heart, and that maybe the decision that was made may not have been in their favor, but that it was fair and that it was in their family's best interest.
I love that. I love that. And I'm hearing you say that as a judge. I'm also thinking back to that equally could have been said as an educator, as other phases of your life. So I am thrilled to know that this is the type of person that is going to be in that position, looking at the humanity, sitting on the other side, keeping families together, supporting them for whatever the decisions are that fall into their circumstance. But I'm definitely glad that you were able to come here and share some of that with us, because voters still got to show up. They are still we're needing them to hear this message so that you get to the position and you can continue this life and career of service. So, Judge Clayton, ma'am, go do the thing. Go do the thing and make sure that you come back for that victory lap, because I want to hear from you again.
Thank you. Well, I sure appreciate it. And thank you for speaking it into existence.
Hey, we gonna make it happen. So What I do want to let everybody know, I mean, this is airing. We're recording this in the summer. So we've got a few months before Judge Clayton is going to actually be up for election. So if you have questions, drop them in the comments. I'm a regular person and I will make sure that she sees it so that if there are things that you're wanting to know just about the campaign or even just her as a person, I mean, these folks are in public service to you. So get your questions out there. If there are things that you maybe are inspired by listening to her journey, put it there. And I know she or I will be able to answer directly for you. So with that said, we're going to close it out. Any parting words for our listeners?
Well, I thank you again for having me here today. And I would just say for the listeners, focus on your purpose, focus on what it is that you want to do, keep going and have no regrets. This is the only life that you have. Have no regrets and continue to do what you're doing and keep going. Keep going.
Yes. And in her word, obediently. Keep going obediently. So thank you for stopping by to the Melanated Midlife podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Again, leave a comment if you have a question for Judge Clayton, but we hope to see you here in the next episode. So bye-bye.